Yeah. All right. So this week's Parshas told us is the truth is one of the more difficult parshas that we have. One of the more difficult stories in all of Tanakh. This week's parsha we have the episode of Yaakov Avinu tricking Yitzchak, his father, to steal the brachas. So the truth is the whole parsha is Amar Darshani. The whole story is difficult to understand. From the get-go, what was Yitzchak Avinu doing, giving brachas to Esav? Why in the world would he think that Esav deserved the brachas over Yaakov Avinu? That's number one. We'll go through some more specific, concrete questions, and then hopefully, at the end, if I remember to answer them, well, then good. If not, the answer's there. It's just you have to work it through. So number one. So why did Yitzchak Avinu love Esav? What did he see in Esav? So the pasuk says, Kitzayid bepiv. Kitzayid bepiv, which literally means, Rashi interprets, that Yitzchak Avinu was a good hunter, and the things that Esav was a good hunter, and those things that Esav captured, the tzayid, the things that he captured, the animals that he prepared for Yitzchak Avinu was in the mouth of Yitzchak. Yitzchak loved the food that Esav prepared through his hunting. Obviously, the simple interpretation is very, very difficult to understand. We have to go a little deeper. So there's a teaching from the Rizal. The Rizal does give a little bit of an understanding, opening to what exactly was the love that Yitzchak had towards Esav, but even that needs an understanding. The Rizal taught that Yitzchak Avinu saw in Esav the soul of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir, we know the Gemara says in Gittin, Rabbi Meir was a descendant of converts, and he came from Esav. Biologically, he came from Esav. Kitzayid bepiv, said that Rizal, means piv over here, means the mouth, means tarsh bal peh. That what Yitzchak saw in Esav was a strong pillar of Tarsh Bal Peh, Rameir. All Mishnayos are Rameir's Mishnayos. Stam Mishnahs are Rameir. So you saw in Rameir the power of Tarsh Bal Peh. So again, it needs understanding. What does Rameir have to do with anything? What exactly does Tarsh Bal Peh do with this whole story? That's number one. Number two, when Rivka Imenu tells Yaakov that Yitzchak is planning on giving a bracha to Esav, so she tells Yaakov Avinu the following thing. Rivka Amar Yaakov ben Noah. Rivka says to her son Yaakov Avinu to go. I heard that your father's plan is to give a blessing towards Esav, and it's not a good idea. Va'ata b'ni shma b'kol. So please, my son, listen to me. La'asher ani mitzava ischa. That which I'm going to tell you to do. This is my plan. Leichna elatzayin. Go to the flock. See, Yitzchak told Esav to go to the field and capture things. So Rivka tells Yaakov Avinu, Leichna elatzayin, go to the flock that we have in the backyard. V'kachli misham, and take from there shnei gedi'is, and two goats, and prepare these goats, and that's what you're going to bring to Yitzchak your father, and you're going to pretend to be Esav. So Rashi's bothered with it. What do we need two goats for? What do you need two goats? Yitzchak is just one person. Rashi brings down from Chazal, V'chi shnei gedi'izim hayamachol shel Yitzchak. What? Yitzchak Avinu needed two goats to eat? Was two goats the standard meal for Yitzchak Avinu? Ella, so says Rashi, Pesach. The answer is no, it was Pesach. And therefore one goat was necessary for the Karban Pesach, for the sacrificial Pesach offering, even before the exodus of Egypt, but Yaakov Avinu, Yitzchak, Avram, they kept the Torah before it was given. So one was for the Karban Pesach, and one was for just Yitzchak Avinu's own pleasure. So the obvious problem, difficulty with Rashi is that why couldn't that one goat fulfill both? Why couldn't the one goat be a sacrifice of the Karban Pesach and also be delicious? What, the Karban Pesach didn't taste good? Besides the Karban Pesach, you also needed another goat to taste good? It's difficult. It's also difficult. Another question. The Zohar Kodesh says the following thing, that when Yaakov Avinu, put on the clothing of Esav and pretended to be Esav, to go to his father, so the Zohar Kodesh says the following thing, that Yaakov Avinu said to Hashem, the pasuk until Midavan to Hashem, the following thing, Hashem, Hatzileini misfas sheker miloshem rumia. Hashem, protect me from lying. Protect me from lying. That everything I say out of my mouth should be 100% true. Yaakov Avinu is the homie. The mid of Yaakov is emes. Titin emes liYaakov. Yaakov Avinu stands for truth. So it's an amazing thing. The one person that stands for truth is put in a position like this where he's mamish lying. But Yaakov Avinu, nevertheless, despite the craziness and the trickery that he's doing over here, pulling the wool over his father's eyes, Yaakov Avinu still davens to Hashem that Hashem protect me from lying, that I should say the truth. So it's difficult. The whole thing is a lie. The whole thing is a lie. How could there be any truth in this whole situation over here? And we all know, Yitzchak Avinu asks whoever's in front of him, are you Esav? So what does Yaakov Avinu answer? Anoichi Esav v'cherecha, right? So we all know Rashi says, I am who I am. Esav is your firstborn. I mean, any of us that would say that, to a spouse, to a child, that's lying. You play around with the words. I said, I am who I am, whatever. You will interpret it, that's a lie. It's special a lie. I mean, maybe technically, there was wiggle room over there that he technically didn't say a word out of his mouth that was technically false, but that's not the emes, that's not the truth. So how could Yaakov Avinu, first of all, how could he do this? It's lying, the whole business is a lie. And second of all, he's going out of his way and davening to Hashem that everything he should say is true. How is it even possible? Right, so these are the difficulties that are taking place in our parsha. Okay, so what I want to talk about for the next few minutes is a very, very important thing. And the truth is, as we'll see, this parsha, this story of Yaakov Avinu receiving the brachas from Yitzchak, pretending to be Esav, is a very, very, very important inyan in the whole history of the Jewish people. And we'll see very clearly soon, hopefully. It's a difficult topic, it's a difficult inyan, but please, bear with me for a little bit. What we're going to learn tonight is heavy in the writings of the Ramchal, Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. And it's in a few places. In Derech Hashem, the way of God, he talks about this in a lot. And also in a sefer called Kinnas Hashem Tzvakos, which is a sefer he wrote specifically to sort of fight against Shabbos Tzvi and his followers. So it's an amazing sefer. He talks about Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. It's unbelievable things in that sefer. So we're going to learn a little bit of Ramchal tonight. Ramchal says the following thing. Why did Hashem create the world? What's the purpose? What's the purpose? So the truth is like this. Whenever you ask such a question, why did Hashem create the world? So when the Sfarim asks such a question, so ultimately, why is unknowable. It's unanswerable. Why did Hashem do this? Why did Hashem get involved in this whole business called the world and called people, human beings? It's really unknowable. But what we can understand is once Hashem decided to do this and to get involved, what's the purpose? What are we supposed to be doing? So Ramchal explains the following thing. He says the ultimate purpose, the Medrash already says. The Medrash says that Nis'ava Kadosh Baruch Hu, that Hashem's desire was Lias Lo Yisbarach Dir B'Sach Toinim, to have a dwelling place in this world, to be down here. Explains the Ramchal. Hashem implanted within each and every one of us a godly soul. Now this godly soul is a Chelik L'Kamimal, we know from the Tanya, other Sfarim, it's mamash, a piece of the divine presence. It's an unbelievable, explosive spiritual energy that the soul has. And the craving of the soul, the deep desire, the unquenchable desire, thirst of the soul, is to explode with spirituality, is to escape and to run up, unbelievable, to the highest of heights and to return to Hashem himself. That's the desire of the soul. On the other hand, the partner with the soul, as we all know, is the body, is the human body. Now the human body on its own is sort of the opposite of the soul. The human body is naturally inclined towards physical life, towards physical things. It's wild. Right? If it's left unchecked, it could go into all sorts of crazy places. And this is the shidduch that Hashem put us in. Every single one of us has to deal with this. We have on the one hand the soul, which is godly, and wants nothing but to connect to God. And then you have a body on the other hand, which on its own wants nothing but to be involved in physical things. But the Ramchal taught the following thing, that even though it's a difficult shidduch, it's a difficult partnership, nevertheless, the ultimate purpose and the greatest perfection that's possible is when these two opposites come together. The Baal Tanya, for example, once gave a parable to explain the relationship between the soul and the body. He said, let's say you have a certain mountain, that's a very, very difficult mountain to climb, and you have a human being that wants to get to the top of this mountain. The problem is the human being, even though he wants to and he knows exactly the route to take, he physically can't make it. So right next to him, there's this huge, very powerful horse. And this horse, if it wanted to, it could get to the top of the mountain very easily. The problem is the horse is completely wild, untamed, and it's going to run all over, but there's no way it's going to find the direct route. It's not possible. So what's the eitzos? What's the answer? What has to happen? You have to make a shidduch between these two opposites. You have to take a human being who's cerebral, who understands exactly what the mission is and how to get there, but lacks in the physical power of the horse, and you have to make that a shidduch with the horse. And what the person has to do is tame the horse and control the horse and teach the horse how to control itself and to focus its energy on that directive to getting to the top of the mountain. And then when you put the two together in a healthy way, they'll reach the top of the mountain where each one on its own couldn't do. So explains the Ramchal. The purpose of creation is that there's a two-pronged attack. There's two sides to Avodas Hashem. And each and every one of us has to do this. And humanity has to do this ultimately. On the one hand, we have to exercise that muscle which is called the neshama. The neshama which Hashem gave to us, like I said, its potential, it has unbelievable potential for explosive spiritual energy. But it's like any other muscle, it has to be worked, and it has to be exercised. So one part of Avodas Hashem, one part of Yiddishkeit is to exercise that muscle called the neshama. How do we do that? We'll see in a few moments. The other side of Avodas Hashem, the other side of the coin, is taming that horse, which is called in the writings of the Mekubalim called Berurim, the service that's called Berurim of clarification, of sifting through the garbage and clarifying the good from the bad. In other words, the body, which is, in this parable compared to that horse, its power is unbelievable if it's harnessed. The problem is it's wild, and it has animalistic urges and animalistic temptations. What has to be done is there has to be a refinement of the body. The body has to be refined and controlled and focused. But once that takes place, once these two sides of Avodas Hashem are accomplished, where the soul is exercised, where it's fed its proper fuel, and the body is harnessed healthfully and productively, then when you put the two together, unbelievable things happen. Then says the Ramchal, when the neshama is exercised properly, and it's given its fuel, which we'll talk about in a moment what that means, and the body is refined properly, and it's sifted through, and the good of the body is uplifted, and the negative side of the body is rejected, which we'll talk about in a few minutes as well, how to do that. When those two things take place, and then you put them together, then says the Ramchal, then the neshama is now given its proper system to work with, and the neshama will then explode with spiritual light. Hashem will be infused in the soul with an unbelievable way, and it will be uplifted through the body will help the soul will help the body, and they'll be able to reach the mountaintop. That's the purpose of creation. And ultimately we're all going to get there. That's the resurrection of the dead. Ultimately we'll all get there. The body and soul united, that is the purpose. The purpose of Judaism does not look at the purpose as being soul without a body, and it does not look at the purpose as body without soul. The purpose is soul and body in harmony together. This has to be done in two ways. Again, there's a two-pronged attack. There's the uplifting, there's the exercising of the soul. It's okay. There's the exercising of the soul. You shouldn't stand there all night. It's okay, you can pass through. There's the exercising of the soul. And then as well, there's the refinement of the body. No problem. There's the refinement of the body. So now Ramchal goes a step further, and he explains as follows. Before Adam Rishon sinned, before the first sin of Adam Rishon, when he ate from that tree of knowledge of good and evil. So explains the Ramchal, this process of exercising the body and of exercising the soul and refining the body was relatively easy to do. It was relatively easy to accomplish. All that was necessary for Adam Rishon to do at that stage of before the sin, to accomplish this perfect state of harmony and balance and a perfect shidduch between body and soul, was very simple. Avoid the tree of knowledge of good and evil and serve God. That's all. That was all that was necessary. That was all that was necessary. Chazal in fact say that the Torah was given to Adam Rishon before he sinned. But in the level that he was existing on, practically speaking, all he had to do to refine the body was just to stay away from that tree. Stay away from that tree. If Adam Rishon were to stay away from that tree and he would then experience the first Shabbos, so says the Ramchal, the perfect union would have happened. See, him experiencing the first Shabbos would have been the ultimate exercise for the soul. It would have given the Shabbos, the light of Shabbos, that first Shabbos would have been that fuel that the soul needed to explode with explosive spiritual energy. That's on the one hand. And then on the other side, to refine the body, all he had to do was not eat from that tree. If he stayed away from that tree and experienced that first Shabbos, the ultimate rectification would have taken place. The body would have been refined, the soul would have been uplifted, and the shidduch would have happened. That would be the end. The problem is he ate from the tree. He ate from the tree. So ever since Adam Rishon ate from that tree, so now something terrifying took place. Something difficult took place, and we're still suffering it to this day. What took place at that moment when Adam Rishon ate from that tree of good and evil was that no longer is this two-pronged attack of Avodas Hashem so simple. Once he ate from that tree, then what took place was the following. The body of Adam Rishon that ate from that tree and all of his descendants that come from him, what took place at that moment is that all evil and all negative qualities and real bad stuff was then absorbed into his body. Where now the job of refinement, of separating good and evil, of berurim, of separation of good and evil, of refining the body, of getting rid of the ugliness and just focusing on the positive within the body is exceedingly difficult. Exceedingly difficult. And on the other hand, because the body is so unrefined at this point, and because there's so much negative evil infused within the body because of what he ate from that tree, So because of that, now the soul ultimately is very difficult for it to be exercised. Because at the end of the day, the soul is trapped in this body, which is so coarse and so filthy and so full of evil temptations, it's almost impossible for it to be fully exercised right now. And therefore, once Adam Rishon ate from that tree, and he sort of doomed his body to have to go through such difficulty to sift through the good and the bad, and he doomed his soul to be, to not allow it to really be fully exercised and expressed properly. So Hashem said, you're doomed to death. What is death? Sounds a little harsh, but what death is not just a punishment. The Ramchal explains that death was the ultimate way to fix the problem. Why? So Ramchal explains because even though we'll see that the job is still incumbent upon us to work at, but ultimately speaking, it's impossible in the state that we are in to fully 100% refine the body and to separate all the evil from the body and all the negative aspect of physical life from the positive of physical life. It's absolutely impossible ultimately to perfect that in the state that we're in. And what Hashem therefore has to do is each and every one of us, the body has to be broken down in the way it is right now, and then it will be reconstituted in a healthy way of what it was before Adam Rishon sinned, which is the resurrection of the dead. Now at that same moment when the body is breaking down in the earth and the body is being reconstituted and fixed to the way it was before the sin, then at that moment the soul is in heaven, and finally the soul is given its opportunity to exercise itself. When if a person, God forbid, is very artistic and very, has let's say a musical gift or whatever the case may be, and he's stuck for a long period of time, with an inability to express that artistic side of himself, it's sick. The person can become emotionally ill. So each and every one of us has a soul within us that deep down within it is exploding with spiritual energy. The problem is it's trapped in a body which, because of the sin of Adam Rishon, it can't really fully express itself. So ultimately, the soul suffers from that. The soul suffers from that inability of expression. So therefore, when a person passes away, what takes place is that these two sides of Avodas Hashem are finally able to be complete, where the body is reconstituted in a more refined way, and the soul at the same time is in heaven able to express itself. When this happens, where the soul finally expresses itself to a level that it can, when this happens, the soul does what it can, and the body is fixed on earth, and then it's reformed in a positive way, in the way before the sin. So ultimately, then what Hashem does is make the shidduch again, with the resurrection of the dead. And you have a new body in a refined way, a perfected state, a tame horse, where it's controlled. And then you have that soul which until now in heaven was expressing itself, exercising its abilities, and now it's brought back down into that body, and that's the ultimate perfection. So that which was broken by Adam Rishon sinning is fixed ultimately by the process of death and the reemergence of the body with the resurrection of the dead. That's the process. That's what Ramchal says. Now the Ramchal explains further. Again, this is all the introduction, the background, then we'll get to our parsha of Yitzchak and Esav and what does it mean for us in Avodas Hashem practically. Now, even though, says Ramchal, that ultimately speaking, it's impossible for each and every one of us to fully perfect our body and fully exercise our soul until the resurrection of the dead. It's impossible for us to do that fully. Nevertheless, that which was broken by Adam Rishon sinning, Hashem still gives us a chance to do the best we can. And ever since Adam Rishon sinned, these two sides of Avodas Hashem are still within our grasp, and they're still incumbent upon us to work at. Ever since Adam Rishon sinned, we still have these two sides. See, for example, the Torah itself is divided into two parts, right? The Torah is divided into two parts. We have 248 positive mitzvahs and 365 negative mitzvahs. What's the essence of the two? What's the difference between the two? So Ramchal explains very simple. The 248 mitzvahs that Hashem gave us, that's the focus, the point of the 248 positive mitzvahs are the side of Avodas Hashem which is called exercising the soul. Every single one of the 248 positive mitzvahs is another piece of nutrition for the soul, another little piece of fuel for the soul to work and to grow and to express itself. Every single time a Jew puts on tefillin, every single time a Jew lights Shabbos candles, what you're doing is adding fuel to the neshama, and you're allowing your neshama to express itself and to exercise its abilities and to resurface a little bit in your life. The 240 positive is that part of Avodas Hashem which is called fixing the soul, exercising the soul. The other side of Avodas Hashem, the other side of Torah, is the 365 negative mitzvahs. What are those about? Those are the 365 negative mitzvahs are what are the keys that Hashem gave us, the guidelines that Hashem gave us, and how to refine the body. Hashem gave us a life, Hashem gave us a body, and Hashem gave us in this crazy world to live in. So therefore Hashem gave us the instruction manual of how to refine ourselves. That it is true that you have to eat, and it's true that you have to live, and you have to do everything a human being needs to do. The body is a major part of our lives. But Hashem gave us these 365 eitzes, these 365 pieces of advice of how to steer clear from the negative and only connect to the positive. A Jew has to eat. A Jew has to live. But there's a way to live, and there's a way to eat. And if a Jew keeps the halachas of kashrus, and a Jew only eats kosher, then what Hashem is doing is in that negative mitzvah called not eating treif, not eating non-kosher food, then what he's doing is that while he's eating, he's refining, he's sifting through the good, and he's only connecting to the good, and he's getting rid of the bad. That's what's taking place when a Jew keeps the 365 negative mitzvahs. That is the guideline, that is the instruction manual of how to refine the body. Those are the two sides of Avodas Hashem. So, for example, there are certain mitzvahs which, let's say for men, which are more predominantly focusing on exercising the soul, and some which are more predominantly focused on protecting ourselves from evil, to refine the body. So when a Jew puts on tefillin, there's two mitzvahs sort of for men that sort of go together: tzitzis and tefillin, talis and tefillin. They always go together. So according to the Rizal, what's taking place when a Jew keeps these mitzvahs is that tefillin is about exercising the soul. Tefillin is about expressing the neshama. Tzitzis, the talis that wraps a person, that protects a person. The tzitzis, the talis, is about refining the body, protecting the person from the evil that's surrounding him sometimes. And for women also have mitzvahs that are like this. When a woman lights Shabbos candles, the mitzvah of Shabbos candles is about expressing the neshama. It's an unbelievable way of expressing a female neshama is by lighting Shabbos candles. And on the other hand, a woman who, let's say, the mitzvah of challah, for example, when she's baking and she separates the dough for the challah, that's an unbelievable mitzvah of separating good from bad. And that has an unbelievable way of fixing the body, of refining the body. So the whole idea of tznius, for both men and women, is about that. It's about fixing, refining the body, of keeping that which is pure inside and keeping it safe and protected from the outside elements that might tamper with it and might abuse it and so on. These mitzvahs are not just simple things. What's taking place is that, again, these are two-pronged attack of what Avodas Hashem is about. It's about fixing the body, refining the body, separating the good and bad from within physical life, and about exercising the neshama with spirituality. Those are the two sides of Avodas Hashem. See, even within Torah, for example, even within the study of Torah, there are also these two sides. There's one aspect of Torah which is called learning Gemara, right? Or figuring out halacha, learning halacha. Anyone who ever attempted even to learn any Gemara knows that all of what Gemara is about is sifting through good and bad. That's what it is. You have a certain concept and you have a question on it, and now the question is bombarding you and there's a contradiction. So you have to dig deeper and find the solution by sifting through all the questions and the answers to try to get to the final halacha, which is do this or don't do that. The learning of Gemara, the learning of Nigla, the learning of halacha is all about refining the body. It's about sifting through the good, sifting through the bad to find the good, to find that core, that little kernel of truth that's amongst all the different questions of the Gemara. On the other hand, there's another aspect of learning which is called Pnimis HaTorah, which is called learning Kabbalah and Chassidus and things like that, where over there's not much questions. It's all light. And when a person learns Pnimis HaTorah, when a person learns Kabbalah or whatever it is on his level, he's not being bombarded with garbage that he has to sift through. He's not being bombarded with contradictions. And he's not being bombarded by questions of how do I do this, what do I do, how do I fulfill this mitzvah. It's a question of what is the mitzvah doing to me. When a person learns halacha, so he's learning about the halachas of tefillin, it's all about how to do tefillin, and how to make tefillin from a piece of leather which is coming from an animal. And what do I do to sift through the garbage and to get to that core truth, which is how to put on tefillin. But then when a person learns Pnimis HaTorah about tefillin, it's no longer about the questions, about sifting through all the questions, coming up with the solution to get to that truth. It's all truth. When a person learns Pnimis HaTorah, what he's coming in contact with is just the light of Hashem that's shown to him in the mitzvah of tefillin. So even within Torah, you have these two halves. Again, that's what I'm saying. Avodas Hashem is split up into these two parts. You have one aspect which is about exercising the soul, spirituality. When a person even listening to a niggin and singing and dancing, that's expressing the power of the neshama. And then when a person is confronted by Yetzer Hara, he's confronted by an evil urge, and he overcomes himself. He stays away from people he has to stay away from. He stays away from things he should stay away from, and so on. When he comes in contact with something evil and he protects himself and he sifts through that garbage and he stays away from it, that's called refining the body. These are two parts of Avodas Hashem and both equally important. So explains the Ramchal, once Adam Rishon died, then generally speaking, there have been individuals throughout history which are more dominant, which are more pulled towards the world of exercising the soul. And there are other Jews, and there are other people that are more predominantly pulled towards the world of refining the body. So, for example, the Ramchal explains that this was the core division, the difference between Cain and Hevel. What was the difference between Cain and Abel? The whole story of Cain and Abel, that Cain killed Abel and so on. What was Cain about? What was Hevel about? So Ramchal explains, and all people think, Cain, the avodah, the service of Cain was and should have been the refinement of the body. Cain was a person who Hashem implanted in this world to fix that world which is called evil. To be confronted by evil, to deal with the Yetzer Hara, to deal with all sorts of garbage, and to sift through it, and to come to the point of truth. To deal with the Yetzer, to be confronted by evil things. Hevel, on the other hand, the job of Hevel was not to be confronted by evil. His job was to exercise the soul. Each one of us would love to choose the world of Hevel much more than we would the world of Cain. Each one of us would love to be able to just enjoy Yiddishkeit, to feel the enthusiasm, the love of Yiddishkeit, without having to be confronted by Yetzer Hara constantly. And each one of us would love to have a Hevel and not a Cain. But the truth is, both are equally necessary. And just as the soul has to be exercised, the neshama, the body has to be refined. So you have two different people. You have some people that, for example, there's when they say Shema, they're so meticulous in pronouncing every word properly. Right? So you have some people that say Shema for like 15 minutes. Such a thing, right? But when they're saying Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and they're stretching out the Echad and the Adnai and the Elokeinu for 15 minutes to make sure that every Kametz Patach is said properly, are they thinking about what does it mean to have a one God? Not necessarily. It's an unfortunate thing. There are those people that are completely stuck in that world of sifting through garbage, of sifting through negative things to find the core of truth, which is an unbelievable avodah. It's an unbelievable avodah to be bombarded with physical base things and to sift through it and to deal with it. It's an unbelievable thing. But then you have the other hand, you have people that are completely floaty out there. They'll learn Kabbalah when they're not ready for it. That's one extreme. Or you have people that, talk about spirituality but don't keep the basics of halacha. That's the other extreme. So what good is that? They're thinking about God, but they're not saying the words. They're not saying Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. So it's difficult. These two sides of Yiddishkeit both have to be very much uplifted. The world of the spirit of the soul has to be exercised by spirituality, by singing, by hislavos, by feeling. But the world of meticulous details of halacha, of sifting through this world and dealing with the things that confront us and focusing on trying to find the good within the bad, that also has to be uplifted. So Cain and Hevel were chosen for this. Hevel was killed and Cain fell off the map. So Avram Avinu decides that he's going to take upon himself these two roles. That's what he did. And Avram Avinu began the Jewish people, and he took upon himself the responsibility and the zchus of fixing the problem of Adam Rishon, fixing the mistake, of exercising the soul and uplifting the body, of exercising the soul and refining the body. That's what Avram Avinu decided. So Avram Avinu has the Yitzchak. Yitzchak has two sons, Yaakov and Esav. This is where we get to Yaakov and Esav. What did Yitzchak see in Esav? What did he see in Esav? See, there's an interesting thing. In the Parsha, in Yitzchak's Parsha, there's a fascinating thing that in the middle, right before this whole episode of Yitzchak Avinu wanting to give a bracha to his son, we have this whole thing where Yitzchak is digging wells. He's digging wells. That's really the only thing we have in Chumash that's exclusively just about Yitzchak. There's parts of Yitzchak's life, stories about Yitzchak which are connected with Avram Avinu, like by Akedah. Then you have stories of Yitzchak's life which is connected with Yaakov Avinu, like the brachas and so on. But what's the one story we have, or one of the stories that we have that's exclusively just Yitzchak, is in digging wells. What's this business with digging wells? What's the Yitzchak about? Yitzchak's avodah, Yitzchak's inyan was to fix that world of Ra, to sift through the garbage. That's what it means, to dig a well. It means to dig in this world, to find water in the schmutz of this world. That's what Yitzchak Avinu was. That's what Yitzchak Avinu, his name means to laugh. What causes laughter? What makes a person laugh? When something strange that you didn't expect happens. That's what makes the person laugh. Right? When a guy who's all respectable and is wearing a top hat and walking down the street with a bow tie and slips on a banana peel, that makes a person laugh. I mean, theoretically, because it's the last thing you would expect. Someone so dignified slipping on a banana peel. That's what a joke is about. It's the unexpected. When you expect the joke, it's not funny. Right? That's what a joke is. So what's the greatest laughter that could possibly be? To be in this world, to be involved in physical life, and to find something good in it. That's the greatest joke to ever happen. Yitzchak Avinu's avodah was to sift through this world and to find a core of good. To focus on refining the body. That was Yitzchak Avinu's avodah. So Yitzchak Avinu had two sons. He had a son, Yaakov Avinu, who the pasuk describes as Nish Tam Yoshev Olam, who was a simple Jew who always studied Torah. He was an Ish Chalak, he was soft and he was, fair-skinned and so on. Yaakov Avinu meant that world of exercising the soul. Yaakov Avinu meant that world of the Torah, the world of Pnimis Torah, of the inner light of Torah. Yaakov Avinu is Yoshev, he's in the tents of Torah, he's hidden, he's inside, he's unknowable, he's that world of the soul. Now Yitzchak Avinu had another son called Esav. Yitzchak Avinu saw in Esav, at least in potential, what he wanted Esav to be. Esav is described as a hunter. What does it mean to hunt? It means to go out into the field, go out into this world, and to conquer things, and to trap things, to bring them back to God. That's what a hunter is. That's what it should be. A holy hunter is like that. Where he goes out into the world, and he hunts, and he brings back matamim, he brings back delicacies for his Father in heaven. That's what Yitzchak Avinu wanted Esav to be. The hairiness of Esav is described as an ish seir, someone that has hair. Hair means confusion. Hair gets tangled up. Right? Hair means very, very small nitty-gritty details of life that very much confuse and intertwine with each other. See, Yaakov Avinu doesn't have hair like that. Yaakov Avinu is smooth and soft and everything is easy. In the world of the soul, everything is straight and smooth and beautiful. But Esav means that world that's not beautiful at all. Esav means that world of chaos, that untamed horse. But Yitzchak Avinu saw in Esav that maybe I could tame him. Maybe it's possible that he could be the one of my descendants that focuses on that aspect of service of Hashem. Yaakov Avinu will focus on on exercising the soul, and Esav Harasha will be the one to focus on refining the body. Because if anyone knows about the body, it's him. If anyone knows about evil, it's Esav. But he hoped that maybe Esav will be that person to overcome that evil, to finally be able to refine that evil. But Rivka Imenu saw more than that. And Rivka Imenu knew her children a little bit better than Yitzchak did. And Rivka Imenu saw that ultimately Esav can't do that. And therefore, what did Rivka Imenu say? Rivka Imenu therefore said to Yaakov Avinu, I want you to go, and I need you to take the brachas from your father. And those brachas which Yitzchak Avinu was planning on giving to Esav would have given him the strength. What Yitzchak Avinu planned on doing was to give him the strength to accomplish that side of Hashem, of refining the body, of sifting through the garbage of this world, of refining the things of this world, of suffering, of dealing, of being confronted by Yetzer Hara, and being able to overcome it and to conquer that world and to bring delicacies back to your Father in heaven. Yitzchak Avinu wanted that, and those are the brachas that he was going to give. That's the brachas that Yitzchak Avinu gave ultimately to Yaakov, even though he planned on giving it to Esav. Those brachas were about physical things. That Hashem should give you from the dew of heaven and from the fats of this world. That nations of the world should serve you. It's all about things of this world, because that's what Yitzchak Avinu saw in potential in Esav. But Rivka Imenu told Yaakov Avinu that I need you to do both. That even though Yitzchak thinks that you are one side of the coin and Esav is the other, he's making a big mistake. Esav is not that side. Esav is pure Ra, he's pure evil, and he can't be refined. He can't be the one to be given that role of refining evil, of having to deal with the Yetzer Hara and overcome it. He can't be part of that. And therefore you, Yaakov Avinu, have to be the one to take both sides of the coin, and both of these sides of Hashem is going to come from you and you alone. So we started with a question, by the way, that Rivka Imenu said to Yaakov Avinu that you have to take two goats. So he asked the question, we need two. So Rashi said, one for the Karban Pesach and one for just delicacies. So the question was, we need both. Still, one could do both of that. Why can't the Karban Pesach taste good? But the answer is what Rivka was hinting to Yaakov Avinu was this inyan, that by you taking 2 goats to your father, is that you're telling your father, and you're telling Hashem, and this is our tefillah, said Rivka, is that you have both of the sides of this coin. Both sides of service of Hashem is on you now. So you have 1 goat, which is a Korban Pesach, which represents exercising the soul. What was the Korban Pesach? Korban Pesach, Hashem jumping over the houses of the Jewish people. It's about uplifting the Jew. It's about uplifting the soul. That's what the Korban Pesach is about. And on the other hand, you have the other sacrifice, which is all about the delicacies. The delicacies brought to Yitzchak Avinu. What are the delicacies? It means going out to this world and trapping things, which is what Yitzchak Avinu wanted Esav to do. Those were the delicacies that Yitzchak wanted Esav to do. That's going to be your job as well. These are the 2 goats that Yaakov Avinu brought, symbolically showing that both of these sides of Hashem is going to be within me. And Kachav, this is what happened. So immediately after this episode of Yaakov Avinu stealing the brachas from Yitzchak, and now he brings within himself both of these worlds of service of Hashem, so he immediately goes to find the shidduch. And what happens? He marries 2 women, Rachel and Leah. And from the world of Rachel and Leah, both 2 big tzaddikim come out. A tzaddik called Yosef, and a tzaddik called Yehuda. And from that moment on, these 2 roles of Avodas Hashem, of exercising the soul and refining the body, are both within the world of Yaakov Avinu. One, the banner of Yosef HaTzadik, and this is the world of Mashiach ben Yosef, is about dealing with evil. It's about being confronted with the Yetzer Hara. It's about overcoming obstacles. That's Yosef HaTzadik. So Yosef HaTzadik is thrown into Egypt, and he's thrown into darkness. And even when he thinks he's doing the right thing, he's thrown into prison. Everything is an obstacle in his way. And Chazal say about Yosef HaTzadik and about Rachel Imenu that they were unbelievably tzniistic. They had unbelievable modesty. Chazal say that about Rachel Imenu and about Yosef. What's the modesty of the world of Rachel? What's the modesty of Yosef? Because that's what modesty is. It means when you're thrown into that world of chaos, into that world of evil, of temptation, then you have to insulate yourself and protect that which is holy. That core that's inside, you have to protect it very much. See, in the world of the soul doesn't need much tznius. Because the soul, everything is great. Everything is just exploding with excitement. But it's in that world of matamim, of capturing, of going out into that crazy world called the Yetzer Hara, where there's unbelievable mixtures of good and evil. That's where a person needs to be unbelievably tzniistic, where you have to hold on very tightly to that which is holy and separate it from that which is impure, and to protect yourself in that chaos. That's the tznius of Rachel and the tznius of Yosef. On the other hand, you have the world of Leah and the world of Yehuda, which is about Mashiach ben David, which is about the explosiveness of the soul. So for example, the rulership of Yosef is in Mitzrayim. Yosef is the second in command of Egypt. He's the king over the nations of the world. Because that's his inyan, is to be thrown amongst the nations of the world, to be confronted and bombarded by temptation, to be bombarded by evil and dirty things, and to control himself, and to overcome and to withstand all that. But as opposed to the world of Yehuda is in Yerushalayim. Yehuda's rule, his malchus, is in Yerushalayim, surrounded by walls. The world of the soul, just explosive spiritual energy. And both of these worlds are now contained within the world of Yaakov Avinu. But again, Yitzchak Avinu's plan was that maybe Esav would do this. But that was the mistake. And this is why the Svarma explained, this is why specifically this inyan of Yaakov Avinu getting the brachas and taking this role of what was supposed to be, or could have been, the role of Esav, had to be in a way of trickery. It had to be in a way of trickery. Because the whole inyan of descending into that place of impurity and still withstanding and holding on to that which is good and finding some goodness in that world and capturing that which is holy in that place of impurity is all about trickery. That's what it is. It's going into behind enemy lines and finding good there and finding good there and finding godliness there. That's all one big trick. But that's the job. That itself is the job. That itself is the avodah of what Esav could have been and what Yaakov Avinu ended up having. It's going into evil, descending into that place of trickery, that place of sheker, and holding on to truth in that place. This is what I started with. According to the Arizal, what Yitzchak Avinu saw in Esav was the soul of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir is all about Tarash Baal Peh. What's Tarash Baal Peh? Tarash Baal is all this inyan. Tarash Baal Peh is human intellect, which is the same intellect that can be used to come up with all sorts of heresies and all sorts of craziness. But it's that same intellect when it's harnessed properly and when it's refined, it's sifting through all the craziness of this world and coming to that core truth called Torah. That's what the human intellect is about. See, prophecy is not like that. Prophecy is all the soul. The written Torah is prophecy. The written Torah is about God talking to you. There's no questions in written Torah. There's no questions in, there's no contradictions. There's no inner turmoil when it comes to prophecy. Prophecy is, it is what it is. God said this is the truth. That's the truth. It's Torah Sheba'al Peh, which is that world of chaos. It's that untamed horse that has to be fixed, that has to be controlled and veered in the right direction. It has to be refined. That's the world of Torah Sheba'al Peh. So Yitzchak Avinu saw in Esav Rabbi Meir's soul. He saw that in Rabbi Meir. He saw that in Esav. But what happened was, said the Arizal, when Yaakov Avinu put on the clothing of Esav, then all those souls that would be coming, the souls of Rabbi Meir and his descendants, that are from the world of Torah Sheba'al Peh, that were somehow trapped in that world of Esav, when Yaakov Avinu put on the clothing of Esav, he attracted to himself and into the Jewish people those souls. And therefore, when Yaakov Avinu said the words, "I am Esav, your son," that was true. Because that part of Esav, which Yitzchak was attracted to, which Yitzchak saw potential in, that Yitzchak Avinu loved and wanted to give the brachas to, that part of Esav was now part of Yaakov. So every single word of Yaakov Avinu was 100% true. Because he wasn't saying, of course he wasn't the body of Esav, he wasn't Esav, that person. But that aspect of Esav that you love, that you wanted to give the brachas to, that's who I am now. And I am now absorbing within my system and within my prodigy, within my genetics, not just my half of Avodas Hashem, which was uplifting the soul. I'm absorbing within myself the soul of Rabbi Meir, the refinement of Torah Sheba'al Peh, the contradictions of life, being able to be confronted by evil temptations and overcome it. That world of refining the body, that's part of me as well. Anoichi Esav b'charecha, I am Esav, your son. And that was what Yaakov Avinu was davening for, that my words should be of truth. Hashem saved me from lying at all. Because when he said those words, I am Esav, your son, it was 100% true. It's that part of Esav, which Yitzchak loved, is now incorporated into the system of Yaakov Avinu. So what does this mean for us? See, it's an amazing thing. As the generations go on, and as we get closer to Mashiach, the Yetzaharas that we're confronted with, not just the temptations, but the difficulties, the tsaras, the difficulties of life and the darkness that we experience, especially now with Eretz Yisrael, seems to get thicker and thicker and thicker. So it's a difficult thing. But it's all part of this process. Why? You know, one of the great issues with that side of Avodas Hashem, which is called refining the body, of being submerged into evil and to refine it, to find some good and to find some godliness in the craziest of places, is that sometimes the only way how Hashem could take a person and throw him into such terrible situations and terrible places in life and to be submerged in such difficulties is when the higher levels of his soul is taken away from him. So, for example, there's no way if Rashi, with his level of spirituality, there'd be no way for him to even want to enter our generation. If Hashem took our souls and put us into this generation, the last generation before Mashiach comes, and to be bombarded with such difficulties, it's necessary. The only way how we could be confronted with such evil and to be tempted by such evil is if the power of our neshama is a little bit taken away. And that's part of the tragedy, but that's part of the difficulty of life, is that as a person descends into more and more impurity, as the generations go on, our job is to sift through more and more garbage. That's part of the deal. But as we deal with that, and as we are confronted with more and more difficulty, and we withstand the tests as much as we possibly can, then the goodness and the cores, the kernels of truth that we get out of that, and we are able to sift through, is that much more refined. Let me explain. If, let's say, you have a piece of bread, right? So there's a certain amount of sifting that you have to go through in order to create that piece of bread. So, like for example, when you harvest the wheat, so you have to separate the wheat from the chaff. Okay, so the chaff is garbage. You throw in the garbage can. Then you take the wheat. Then you take the kernels of wheat. But that's not finished. Then you eventually sift through more and more, and eventually get the piece of bread. But even within the piece of bread, ultimately speaking, excuse me if I'm being a little, coarse, but ultimately speaking, within that piece of bread, there's waste, right? There's waste. And the truth is that when you want to sift further and further and get to the best part of the bread, which is the nutritional aspect of this piece of bread, that also means to sift through the worst of the worst. That's what it means. And the more garbage and the more filth that the soul, that the person has to deal with, is just a sign that you're coming in contact with the greatest of good. That's what it means. So let me read you a few lines from the Sefer called Pischei Sharm. This is written by Ritzikai Zechaver, a student of the Gra. He writes the following thing. Loi timer person should not say that how is it possible for Mashiach ever to come? And how can we look forward to Mashiach? Because it says in Pischei Sharm it's not true. To say such a question that we're getting worse and worse, the generations are getting weaker and weaker, how could Mashiach possibly come? The tsaras seem to be mounting. Things get worse and worse for the Jewish people. How can Mashiach come from this? So it says it's a big mistake to ask such a question. Because the truth is, this is exactly the way it should be. Because of the clarification, because of the sifting through of the garbage that has to be taken place with the Jewish people, so the deeper the garbage, the darker the garbage, the greater good you're going to get out of it. So therefore, we're bombarded as the generations go on with more and more garbage. But the greater we work on dealing with that and clarifying that place of being confronted by that evil, but overcoming it and not giving in to these temptations or not giving in to the questions of faith that we all ask ourselves sometimes, then that is part of the avodah, which is called refining the body. And therefore, that's an unbelievable avodah. Therefore, when a Jew shouldn't bemoan the fact that sometimes he's put in a situation in life where he's bombarded with problems, and life seems to be an unending barrage of tsars, an unending barrage of questions of difficulties, and he would much rather say to himself, you know what, I don't want to deal with all this stuff. I'd rather just daven and learn and experience Yiddishkeit in a beautiful way. But a person has to be mechazik himself that that's not the way Hashem wants sometimes. That Hashem wants us to exercise the soul and to feel that moment of inspiration. But on the other hand, the main avoid that we have to deal with in our days is this avoid of birum, of fixing the body, of uplifting, of separating the good and evil, which deals with being bombarded with the Yetzer Hara, bombarded with difficulty, and that's our avoid. But we should know that every single time we're confronted by tzaras and we overcome it, whether it means, again, not giving into a temptation, or whether it means trusting in God that even though there are tzaras in the world, it's all for the best, that every moment that we do that, we're mamish capturing delicacies for God, and we're bringing matam, we're bringing delicacies back to our Father in heaven. And Hashem derives unbelievable pleasure from those little gifts that we're able to give Him. Much more than previous generations. Because as we're sifting through, the more the muck that we sift through, the greater the gifts that we can return to Hashem. That's the avodah. So let me end up with a quick story. I just saw this story the other day. It's one of these things, whether you believe it, good. If you don't, no, whatever. It is what it is. The story goes like this. The Baal Shem Tov there was once a person in the village of the Baal Shem Tov that he was I think it says he was a launderer. He had a laundromat. But that's not really part of the story. The main thing is that he owed a lot of money, and in order to pay his debts, he had to borrow a large sum of money from the landowner, the mayor of the city, who was an anti-Semite, not a good person. No, so the mayor gave him a certain date to pay up the loan. The day came, he was struggling, he couldn't pay it. So the part says, listen, okay, fine, listen, next week this time you're going to prison. That's it. So he doesn't know what to do. So his wife tells him, listen, in the town next over there's the Baal Shem Tov, and we hear crazy things about him, miracles and so on. So go to the Baal Shem Tov, get a bracha, see what he says. So the guy's like, I'm not a chassan, I like that. Listen, in a week from now we're going to prison, it can't hurt. So fine, so he goes to the Baal Shem Tov, and he says to Baal Shem Tov what this story is. And Baal Shem Tov says, okay, listen, tomorrow, let me tell you this. Tomorrow, when you wake up in the morning, I want you to go to the market, okay? The first person that goes to you, trying to sell something to you, buy it, no questions asked, whatever the item is, and bring me back the item, and I'll tell you what to do with it. Okay. So, fine, he goes, whatever, he's questioning this whole thing. He wakes up in the morning, he goes to the market to see what the situation is. He's walking the market, and all of a sudden, this peddler comes over to him, who's selling a sheepskin. Look at a sheepskin, not an unrefined, not a very good-looking, cut up. It's not a very, good-looking sheepskin, but fine. He says, do you want to purchase this? So he figures, how much is it? Let's see if I have the money. He says, whatever it is, $50. So he looks in his wallet. Imam has exactly $50. So he figures to himself, okay, it's an interesting coincidence. Let's go with it. So he buys the sheepskin. So he takes it home and he's looking at it, he's thinking to himself, I just lost $50. Like, this is ridiculous. I don't know how this piece of skin is going to save my life. It's ridiculous. So he goes to his wife, and his wife says, no, you did so far already. You did what the Baal Shem Tov said as far as buying it. At least make the travel back to Baal Shem Tov and see what he says. He says, okay, fine. So he goes back to Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov says, okay, did he do what I said? So he said, yeah, this is what I was offered right away, so this is what I bought. So he said, very good. He said, well, I want you to do this following thing. The mayor that you owe money to, in a couple days is going to be his birthday. Okay, and what he does for his birthday is that he gathers up all of his servants and all of his workers and so on, all of his employees, and they have a big birthday party for him. And each one presents a present to him. So I want you to go and present this skin to your boss, to the mayor. So he's thinking to himself, that's mamash, he's going to kill me because this is like a piece of garbage. I'm offering him as a present. He's going to look at it like I'm making fun of him. Well, whatever. I guess I'm going to be dead next week anyway. Might as well. So he goes to the birthday party. He knocks on the door, and they say, "What do you want?" So he says, "I'm here to give a present to the mayor." He says, "What's your present?" They give him the sheepskin, and the butler goes, brings it to the mayor, and the mayor looks and he's like, "Who gave me such a piece of garbage?" He says, "That it's that Jew that owes you money." He says, "That Jew owes me money. He's going to give me this piece of thing." It doesn't make any sense. So he looks at it closer, and as he's about to get so angry at the Jew, he looks at the thing closer, and he's like, there's something strange about this. He takes him to his other room, puts it under the light, and he realizes that it's just the oddest thing. You know, sometimes you have pictures where you look at it, and then you look at it more and more, and like an image pops out of you. There's like those 3D things. Yeah. So he looks at this goat skin more and more, or it's like even when a cloud, and you start seeing images in clouds. He looks at the skin more and more, and he starts seeing that his name is like embedded in like the hairs of the goat in such a way. Like it's saying his name. Not only that, and then it says his wife's name, and it says his birthday. So it's just a crazy thing. So then he starts thinking, that's Taka, a pretty cool present. That's a pretty cool present. Anyone could buy me like a nice cup or a nice pair of shoes or whatever. Like this is a cool thing, like a natural sheepskin that just grew with my name on it. It's a crazy thing. So he calls in the Jew. He says, "Where did you make this?" He said, "No, I'm telling you, I just found it, and because the part says the mayor says to him because it says my name. You see." He's like, "Yeah, of course, that's your name." So he's like, "Yeah, I saw it, and I just had to get it for you, whatever." So the mayor's like, unbelievable. So you know what? It's such an unbelievable present. The debt, forget about the debt. It's okay. Go home with your wife. It's beautiful." And he said, in fact, I'm gonna get my tailor. I'm gonna make this skin into a hat, and I'm gonna wear this hat every day, and it's gonna be my the best thing ever. So you hear such a ma'aseh. What does that mean? So a lot of times, all we can offer up to God is a little disheveled little piece of skin. That's what we can do. But it's not refined, it's unrefined, and it's not the soul that's exploding with imaginative energy and explosive spirituality. It's not like that. All we can do is deal with the tzaras that we have in front of us, and to force ourselves to put on tefillin, to force ourselves to eat kosher, and to force ourselves to do what we have to do to be good Jews. But that's exactly what God wants from us, because at the same time that we're not maybe feeling the enthusiasm of the neshama, but at the same time when we're bombarded and we're confronted with these difficulties and we struggle and we overcome, that's called refining the body. And we're sifting through all the garbage to find those little pieces, those little treasures that we can find to God. And there's one treasure that Hashem delights in, that's called a Jew that forced himself out of bed in the morning to daven. And there's another treasure that Hashem has, which is called a woman who forces herself to eat kosher. These are the presents that we offer to Hashem. And when Mashiach comes, it's going to be revealed how Hashem mamish loves these presents more than anything else. Because it's nice to be explosive with imaginative energy and to daven a 5-hour long Shemona Esrei when you feel like it. That's a beautiful thing. But Hashem could get a lot of coats and a lot of and a lot of shoes, and it's all very nice for his birthday. What Hashem really likes is that crazy thing, that shock value, that funny thing that you would never expect. That's what Avodas Hashem is about. And that's what Yaakov Avinu was doing when he took these brachas from his father. That he was taking within himself, that there is such a thing as a Jew, that, listen, that has to deal with things. It has to deal with tzaras. But when you fight and you struggle and you overcome those things, it's an unbelievable present to Hashem. That's the matam, the delicacies that we go out and we conquer and we hunt and we bring back to our Father in heaven. So we should be zeicher to mechazik ourselves with this, to be able to deal with tzaras and to deal with difficulties. But we shouldn't have to deal with them anymore. We should be zeicher to come to that day where the body is refined, the soul is exercised, the shidduch is made. Amen.